A top story this hour, milk prices in supermarkets are soaring, even as milk farmers are continually being paid peanuts. It's a continuation of South Africa's milky conundrum. And a study by price comparison website Retail Price Watch revealed that while milk prices continue to go up in the major supermarket chains, the dairy farmers continue to struggle. Prices for milk producers remained virtually static for 2 years, while just in 17 months ending May 2016, the prices of major milk brands sold at supermarkets have soared. In effect, despite a squeeze on producers, supermarket prices have risen and the consumer has to go and dig more to pay for goods. The website studied its database regarding the average price of 21 fresh full cream milk producers at 4 large retail chains over a period of 17 months. According to the study by Retail Price Watch, Checkers house brand milk price rose by 24.5% in the 17 months ending May 2016. Pick n Pay house brand rose by 4.8% in the same period, while Spar house brand milk went up by 7% in the same period. There's also the additional issue of huge variation in pricing. In Checkers, for example, Clover milk is 17.8% more expensive than the house brand, and in Pick n Pay it's 25.2% more expensive. In Spar, Clover milk is about 21.2% more expensive than the house brand, and all this while the prices of smaller producers remain much closer to the house brand price.
I used to be very brand loyal when it came to milk. I used to go for the premium brands like Clover. But these days, it's no longer about established brands. I just look at the price tag before I pick any product, and milk included is quite high. Well, milk is such an essential part of a growing children's diet that you just have to do the best that you can as a parent to get them the cheapest milk, but not cut out milk from the diet, because as a mother, I can't do that. Milk is essential. It goes with cereal, it goes with motoho, so it's there every day on the breakfast table.
Actually, when I go to the shops, I'm one of those who doesn't check the price. I just pay. It's milk after all, so I haven't seen any difference.
Store managers of the big retail chains, however, relate the rising prices to the consumption pattern of the staple. They also say that supply of milk is also an issue due to the drought impact.
We've definitely seen a difference. It's come up quite substantially, but it's got to do with the drought and farmers struggling and so forth. So we're aware of the issue, and yes, it is touching the consumer's pocket. They definitely have to fork out more money at the end of the day. We're luckily in an environment where we've got buyers that know what they're doing, so they plan ahead and they make sure that we've got stock.
And joining us on the line is Vicky Baker, founder of the Retail Price Watch, and in studio, Christo Joubert. He's an agricultural economist. Good evening to you and welcome. Vicky, let's just start with you in terms of how the value chain works vertically, especially. Who gets to benefit the most?
Well, thank you very much for speaking to me. The problem is that we don't really know in the value chain who gets to benefit most. And I believe that consumers wouldn't mind paying extra if they knew where that extra money was going. But instead, we find that the farmers are getting very much the same base price, while the price in supermarkets is soaring, and we don't know why. And so what we are calling for is more transparency in the value chain.
All right. Is this a regulation issue in the sense that there is no policy when it comes to the pricing of goods? There is this kind of open-ended environment where it is a recommended retail price and not a set price, that we see this kind of exploitation, even if you will?
I don't think that that's the way to solve it, because you can try and regulate the prices of staples, but it's really not a good idea. What you should do is you should have a free market movement, but it should be more transparent. For instance, since we did that survey, the price of milk has gone down, but we don't know when it's going to go up again. And it would be better if the consumer were to be given warning, and if he were to understand, oh, well, it's transport costs, or it's the drought on farmers, or whatever it is. It's just not fair to manipulate the price at the retail level, where people who've got 5 or 6 kids just suddenly can't afford to give them milk.
All right, we have Christo Joubert. He's an agricultural economist. Vicky, you're welcome to engage him as well. You at home can call us on 011-542-2186, or you can tweet or send your Facebook post. Christo, just the very same question. It sounds like a very complex industry that requires more serious scrutiny, evaluation and monitoring to ensure that the consumers get a fair price. Do you think at the moment with these cartels that South Africa's economy, or rather consumers, are being ripped off?
Well, on the one side, the consumer has a choice to choose between a lot of different types of milk. In the chain specifically, what we see and what we have heard is the variation in the prices. Clover, that is a high-end market product with other brands that's a lot cheaper and in-store brands. So if you're looking at the chain, and that's the first thing that we need to understand, how does it work from farm gate and even before that to retail level. The one thing that we also need to understand, we have the privilege in South Africa that we have milk on our shelves, and the trade of fresh milk isn't as easy as UHT, the box milk that we see. And currently we see a lot of competition between, or substitution also, between the box milk, the long life milk, and then also the fresh milk that's on the shelves.
So besides the customer education and people being more vigilant, we are price sensitive, but you would also want to have the quality. What is currently at play? Are we getting best value for money in your view?
Well, for sure. That is why you have the choice to pay a higher price for your milk.
Yeah, sorry, Vicky. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I just don't agree with that. I just think that's nonsense. Why is it a privilege for us to have fresh milk on our stores, in our stores? Why is that a privilege? We used to have thousands and thousands of dairy farmers, and the price of milk at the farm gate has pushed them out of business, and we are now importing milk from Poland. It's not a privilege, it should be a right.
Okay, Vicky, thank you for that. Maybe I must state it a little bit differently. If we're looking at the free market system, there's a supply and a demand side on the one side, and at least we have something on our shelves. What we can come back to, if we looking at the differentiated prices, that the farmer is getting sort of an even price over time. We saw that the prices move sideways. We're concerned, as Vicky said, that if you're looking at the farm to retail price spread and you work it out on an average, then there is increases, yes, that the retailers getting a little bit more than in that specific spread, but the big issue is that the whole market and these other market forces also in the system. How are we going to solve that? I'm not sure if regulation will assist that, but yeah, to get the supply up and look at other types of things as economies of scale start making it difficult at the one end.
Yeah. Vicky, just with the market challenges that farmers, producers and retailers will cite, the currency, the rand dollar volatility, etc., and the drought, do you think that all of that is justified in the 24% or so increase in the price of milk over this year alone?
Absolutely not. I don't believe it's justified, and I believe that the prices are being manipulated by people who are not farmers and all the way up the chain. But I can't tell you who's doing it. All I can see is look at the price at the farm gate and look at the price when it comes out at the supermarket, and I must know that there's something odd going on.
All right, besides civic groups, organizations like yourself, we don't necessarily have a consumer culture, where people will boycott products as much as we used to before democracy. There obviously needs to be an active citizenry to ensure that primarily people who cannot afford, who can barely survive, are also not taken for a ride. So what are you calling for? What is the next step for the Retail Price Watch?
Well, I'll tell you what happened in England. Because the farmers were not getting their prices in Sainsbury's, they brought their cows into the supermarket and stopped all the traffic. in a form of protest. So those farmers who are not getting the price should band together with the citizenry, and they should say enough and no further. And then secondly, what we should do is have more transparency. Then if there is a drought, then we know why the price has gone up, and we know exactly how much is being added. We know that with petrol. Why can't we do it with milk?
All right, also joining us, Vicky, just stay on the line, please. Sfiso Mahlangu is a political and economic analyst. Thanks so much, Sfiso. Just your input when it comes to what clearly seems to be anti-competitive behavior and the monopoly squeezing out the competition and consumers being cashed out, essentially, in the milk sector.
Well, good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Sandy, and good afternoon to Africa. Happy Monday. We've got serious issues, and within this discussion, I think it opens a broader spectrum of the issues we have in this country. We're faced with a field that is non-competitive. The organs that are out there are still predominantly white-owned. They don't want to infiltrate the market. They don't want others to come and compete because it is their market and they have been holding it their whole lives. One must ask the question and say, what gives the price of milk? Is it the consumer demand? Is it the buyer etiquette, the buyer preference? Is it G-free, fat-free milk, low-fat? Who prescribes what price should be out there? But you get a bottle from the farmer, costs 4 rand, but when you pick it up at the shop, it is now at 13 rand. Where do all the other rands go? So someone is the true beneficiary of this discussion. Someone is benefiting. Someone is taking all these rands. But the farmer suffers because they get a very minimal wage. They get the smallest amount. The consumer continues to have to pay and pay more. And there is a subsidy for all this. So I think these questions need to be answered to say who is the beneficiary.
The missing middle, as it were. Kevin, hello to you. Thanks for your patience. You're calling us from Valcom. Good evening. And what's your question or comment?
I would just like to say, I don't know who the economist is there, but he doesn't seem to know what he's talking about. You know, as from the beginning of this month, milk prices come down 20 cents a litre. The dairy farm is now going to be getting between 4.60 and the Jersey milk, which is high in fat, is probably going to be getting 5.30 a litre. So there's a huge gap. And then you get the Clover saying that it's going to be the most profitable company in the country. And obviously they're making money then. And the dairy farmers are basically selling out.
Are you saying that the dairy farmers, where does the problem lie? Where is the intervention needed, Kevin?
It's gone up.
The problem is that the milk price is too low. The feed price has gone up 45%, and the milk price has come down. I mean, the feed price has gone up again.
Yeah, sorry, Kevin, I didn't get that response.
No, I said the feed price keeps going up. It went up it's gone up 45%, and the poor dairy farmer milk is coming down 20 cents a litre from the 1st of December.
Okay, so we're still with who the beneficiary is, essentially between the farm gate and the shelf store or store shelf. Thanks for
That is a problem. No one seems to know, but is it the middleman? No one seems to know. That's what everybody's trying to find out. Everybody blames Pick and Pay and the supermarkets, but is it them or is it the Clovers and the Dairy Bells and the Parmalats and all of those guys?
All right, Kevin, thanks so much for calling. We'll take Harry. He's a dairy farmer. Hello to you, Harry, and thanks for calling. Exactly how much do you sell your milk for at Farmgate?
At Farmgate, prices are about 4.80 average, countrywide. And if you have a look at it through this drought, everybody's talking about the drought. The milk prices came down by 60, 70 cents. In the drought time, the farmer was getting 60 cents less. But the feed cost went up by 35 to 45%. So it's not the farmer. The farmer's been getting the same price for the last 2 years. More than that, 2.5, 3 years nearly.
So your margins are very slim. I mean, your operational costs, obviously, as you were saying, the feed primarily at 45%, but your prices have been stagnant at about 5 rand a litre for milk, and yet we pick it up for about, 13, depending on where you buy from. In your view, is it the retailer here that is inflating prices, or are there more opportunities in the value chain for exploitation or manipulation?
I think the retailer is definitely to blame, but there is challenges in the middle of people in the middle that's also taking a big cut out of the dairy price.
So what should be done, though, instead of holding our heads, and complaining about prices and affordability and being squeezed? What else can be done?
Well, the dairy farmers should be getting a higher price, because if I can just say to you that 20 years ago there were 30,000 dairy farmers. We are less. I think the amount is now 1,650 farmers countrywide. That's all that's left. So if you don't see red lights there, then you'll never see red lights.
All right, we take a response. Here? Sure, Vicky, go ahead.
I'd just like to say that really the food industry in general in this country is in the hands of a few very large corporations. And if you look at big corporations like Clover, for instance, all we're calling for them to do is to look at sustaining themselves and in looking at feeding the dairy farmers so that they can continue to feed us, to give the dairy farmers a real chance. And that's just sustainable. That only makes sense for Clover. But that, unfortunately, is not what's happening. I mean, I don't want to be petty, but really for Clover just to say that they've opened a lovely visitor centre so that people can go there and visit their factory. Why do we need a visitor centre? The money that they spent on the visitor centre would be better put in supporting the dairy farmers.
All right, Vicky, let's take a caller. Michael and George, thanks for calling. Good evening, and what's your question or comment?
Can I ask you something, please?
Yes, sir.
Why don't you broadcast that parliamentary thing on the SABC?
Well, you've obviously missed it, Michael, but what's your real question? Because we have been broadcasting that.
No, it's on now.
Yes, we also have programming, Michael.
But you're just biased, aren't you?
Wow.
You're such a bunch of wankers, you know that?
Michael, we wish you well.
SABC,
Goodbye.
Big thing.
Yeah, all right, Michael, you obviously don't care what the price of milk is, unlike some of us that have to account for every single penny. He wants to go to the SABC. Let's just respond on what the other panelists were saying around the topic of the day, of the debate.
Well, first of all, if Michael is still watching, and I really believe he's still watching because he's watching ANN7, he has the remote in his hand. And if he really believes that the parliamentary channel is still on, then he can engage.
Yes, so I really just want to keep it relevant for the debate.
Yeah, but to just respond to Kevin, who says maybe we don't precisely know what we're talking about. The issue is, if we talk about the price of milk and the price of bread and the price of mielie meal, and these three prices have risen by over 3 rand in the last year, and then in November or December, they drop it by 3 cents. That isn't a decline. It has in fact increased more than it ever has. So don't just look at a 4 cent decline and think, oh, well, the price of milk has gone down for this year, so these people might not know what they're talking about. There has been a substantial increase in the price of milk and other foods. And maybe then our government, through the Department of Agriculture, must say, how do we support farmers? How do we support agriculture in this country to make food readily available?
Yeah. To
make sure that we can get milk. We can get milk at the prices we need. We're not talking about, fancy yogurts and, and luxury foods here. I think we must really be engaged as a South African public with foods like milk, bread, and mielie meal. Because that is the staple food that South Africans are talking about.
Yeah, let's find out Paul's experience. He's a dairy farmer in the Free State. Paul, earlier on we had Perry, who says that the retailers primarily largely to blame here, who's looting or taking the chunk of the money. So what is your view? What has your experience been?
No, correct. Thank you for taking my call, Vicky. 100%. One of the other big problems here is I farm in Bethlehem area. We supply Douglasdale in Johannesburg. All right. Our milk gets transported by a transporter called, and they pay us directly. They are now cutting us by 20 cents a litre. However, Douglasdale in Johannesburg is not even aware of it. So there's another transporter is even taking a chunk out of the the tiny little piece of scraps which we get offered. And it just carries on. You asked, just following your question, you asked a little earlier about, you asked somebody what price do they sell their milk for, their farm gate price. We don't sell our milk. We take whatever price is offered. And we are price takers, and unfortunately we're bound by that. And, I've mentioned Douglasdale and these sort of companies. They should give us a hand, because at the end of the day, it's them who is killing us as well.
Yeah, but in the value chain, it seems more like it's fragmented, and you're not sure who's involved at which. There's no way of tracing the milk until it gets to shelf level. So if there is any meaningful intervention to be made, obviously, again, what Vicky was calling for is transparency. Why has there not been greater transparency in this sector?
No, I hear you. It's just farmers are just bound to.
Yeah, sorry, Paul, we lost him there. Vicky, your response?
Yeah, I agree with Paul. And again, I say it's all about sustainability. It shouldn't just be about short-term profits. What is the good of importing Crystal Valley milk from Poland, where when something happens in Poland, where the euro suddenly surges or something, we won't be able to afford to do it? And then we won't have any milk, because we won't have any milk here in South Africa. And the people who are exporting it to us will suddenly find a better market, and they won't want to give it to us either. It's just so short term. The thinking is so short term. And it's just to satisfy investors instead of looking at all the stakeholders and seeing how you can satisfy everybody.
Crystal, you feel that there is wasteful expenditure, as Vicky was saying, that there's all these frills and unnecessary trimmings that consumers could get a better deal, including milk producers as well?
Well, Sydney, on the one side, I have a total breakdown of how the value chain works and the cost.
Just very briefly, an executive summary there.
For example, it costs to transport the milk from the farmer to the processor around about 70 cents. Further on, if we're looking at the processing side and the quality assurance, there we talk about the 130. The container alone, that is around about 160. Then the filling of the labor side around that's around about 10 cents. Then the marketing and distribution, that's around about 210, 215 for that. The retailer's markup at the end is around about 15%, between 12 and 15%. The chain is long, and we must understand that milk, raw milk and pasteurized milk is not the same product. And food and healthy safety regulations that need to be complied with. So if you're looking at the chain is complex, as we previously said. I think that the chain is already very slim and effective. What we see, there's a lot of concentration in the chain. And if we want to break up the chain and let's rather say, break the concentration, then we're going to see that we're going to probably pay more for milk at the end of the day.
All right, Nakedi is calling us also a dairy farmer. Christo says there's nothing wrong with the system. Don't break it, or rather don't fix it if it's not broke. On the other side, we're sitting with a situation where there is potential collusion and the consumer is getting the short end of the stick. Nakedi, what is your comment? Good evening, or question.
Yes, good evening, the studio. No, the problem is just that the milk is raising up and down. So sometimes the milk you are using the milk and each every day for kids and for everything for milk. But I can't understand why the price could be going up like this.
Yeah, I mean, it's affordability, as we're saying, that if, there is a way of eliminating, unnecessary expenditure, not at the cost of business. Obviously, they need to survive and show profits and shares for their shareholders. But we need just answers. There's more questions than what there are answers.
I'm surprised that a country that believes in offices such as the Ombudsman, offices of the public protector like South Africa, has not set up a consumer ombudsman to look at the prices. I know there's consumer ombudsman that's available to look at if you buy something and it doesn't treat you well, that sort of thing. But we need a pricing model, and an organization that will look at the pricing model and whether this is not a developed country. South Africa is a developing country. What this consumer model needs to do is look at the fact that is the pricing available in the stores in this country, satisfying the needs of the indigent. Because in a developing country, we've seen models from this in China and Cuba and Russia. You cannot sell above your people. In a developing country, you must service the indigent. They're very, very important. And so we need those organizations to come to raise in this country so that things like milk and bread are available.
Yeah.
You know, that they're at a purchase price, that the availability is there. But these groups, these are large corporations, Cindy, that are owned by, you know, by billionaires, and they don't want to lose it. You know, one of the callers was sharing and saying, well, we don't know where the money goes. It goes to the corporations because they make wealth of it. And, you know, it's a simple concept. If you don't, if you can't afford it, you don't buy it, but we still make our money anyway. And so it doesn't make sense for South African growing business.
Yeah, I mean, Vicky, I think the whole ideology here in South Africa, whether we're a democracy, a socialist, or communism, or capitalism, all of these ideologies that put in one pot makes it very difficult to care or for the majority to benefit from the economic instruments. But in closing, what do you then do going further besides your research, investigation, and data analysis?
Well, I think that and it's certainly something that I've been part of, is to lobby government to improve access to farming to small farmers, because all small farmers have got cattle. But how do they get them? I can't say all of them, but many of them do. How do they get the milk to the dairy producers? Because they're not really interested in the small farmer. They just want to buy in bulk. And really and truly, we should be looking at models which give and incentivize small farmers to give us their milk and whatever other produce that they have. But unfortunately, the government policies are just not up to that.
All right, Vicky, thanks so much. Just very last words from you, Christoph, briefly.
I believe there's other issues in the system that need to be addressed. We understand that our farmers is under pressure. We understand that the consumer is also currently under pressure. But if you're looking at the total trade and our farmers is supported at the end of the day, then I believe we can do much more.
Okay, we're going to have to leave it 10 seconds. Please.
All right. I strongly call that before we buy anything that is bought outside or made outside of the country, we first support South African business. We first support South African business, young South African business people, young South African black leaders, black business. When we support that, then we can grow, the markets can grow. But we cannot overlook milk that is made in South Africa and then be bringing in milk from Poland. It doesn't make economic and development sense.
All right, Sfiso Mahlangu is an economic analyst, and we have Christo Joubert, agricultural economist. Vicky Baker is the author of the debate, or rather the research that we are talking about, and she's the founder of Retail Price Watch. And you at home, thanks indeed for calling as well. We take a quick ad break. We'll see you shortly.